Today in Luther's Kitchen, we're making spring iced cookies. And to start with, we're going to begin creaming some room temperature unsalted butter with some granulated sugar. You want to beat this mixture until it is light, white, and fluffy, and all the butter and sugar is stuck to the side of the bowl. Then you're going to add a couple eggs, and again, turn the mixer on high and beat until the eggs are well incorporated. Before you add in the vanilla extract, make sure you scrape down the side of the bowl and the paddle attachment. Now it's time for the vanilla. Again, scrape down the side of the bowl before adding in baking powder, kosher salt, and all-purpose flour. And at this point, you want to stir to combine, but you don't want to overmix. Again, make sure you're scraping down the side of the bowl. You can try rolling this dough out right away, and to do that, you would sprinkle a little flour on a clean surface, and you get a rolling pin and roll it out about 1/2 inch thick, and you can start cutting shapes from that. But if the dough is too warm, it's going to stick like crazy and you'll really not enjoy this process. So you can chill the dough. I would wrap it in plastic. I would roll it out like a flat frisbee, chill it for a couple hours. When the dough is the desired thickness, and again I think 1/2 inch is plenty, 1/4 to 1/2 inch, you want to go ahead and cut out your shapes, trying to minimize dough scraps. That's the part that you can't use. You can re-roll it, but every time you re-roll the dough, your hands are heating up the butter and it creates a melt. You're going to transfer the shapes to a parchment-lined baking sheet pan. You're going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. These are going to bake for about 10 to 12 minutes or until they're slightly golden brown around the edges. Now you can make your icing. So we're going to use confectioner's sugar, some milk, and some corn syrup. And we want to get everything well incorporated so there are no lumps and everything is very smooth. If your mixture is super dry, you can always add in another teaspoon at a time of milk, but you don't want to overdo it. And if it's too loose, you can always add in a tablespoon of confectioner's sugar at a time. You want a consistency that is spreadable, but not super runny. Now I'm pulling some icing out and putting it in a few different ramekins so that I can color it. I'm using food coloring that does not have artificial colors, so it's all plant-based natural color, and they are not as bright as the fake food coloring, so my colors are a bit muted, but for spring colors they're perfect. So I'm just adding in some of that icing into the yellow to lighten it up. Now I'm going to put just plain icing in a small piping bag, and I'm not even putting a tip because I'm just going to be very careful when I cut the bottom of the bag so that I don't cut too much off. I want to have a very fine point with this piping bag because I want to pipe an outline around the cookies because it helps hold the icing without it running down. So I'm just doing a little test. I always cut tiny pieces, and if it's too small I can cut more, but if I cut too much from the beginning I cannot fix that. So now I'm going to put a nice border around the edge of each egg-shaped cookie. I'm going to let that dry for about 10 minutes before I put the icing in the center, or you could just spread the white icing. But sometimes if you just spread the icing without having that border, then you get runny edges. Now that my border has hardened, I'm going to add some colored icing to the center, and I could use a small spoon or a small offset spatula to work the icing close to and touching that piped border, but I don't want to push too hard because I don't want it to run down the sides. And while on video this is only a few seconds, this actually took me quite a while to do. You want to take your time with this part so that you have an attractive looking cookie. And Now I'm just going to repeat the process with a different color. You can also use some of that leftover piping white icing to make patterns. You could put polka dots on. You can use sanding sugar. Sky's the limit when you're decorating these cookies. I am not artistic at all, and doing these types of decorative things really make me quite nervous. But if you just take your time, you can produce some decent looking cookies. So in this one, I'm going to just make some nice polka dots. You can also spread a few of them in white, and then you could sprinkle some sanding sugar on top. So I have all natural colored sanding sugar. I'm just going to sprinkle this on top. It's super important to let these sit so that they fully firm up, so that the icing fully dries before you try to put them on a plate or in a box to give away as gifts, or even in a bag. For this recipe and more, visit myclasscancook.com.